The string light stretched across our backyard glimmered like a stage I somehow didn't belong on, as if the entire night had been designed for someone else. People cheered with practiced enthusiasm, raising glasses that sparkled in the glow, cameras flashing like tiny fireworks. Every burst aimed at my sister. No one glanced in my direction, not even out of courtesy, not even by accident. I was turning 18 that night, but in that sea of faces, I may as well have been invisible. I stood quietly behind neatly arranged champagne flutes, the heat from a lantern sticking to my skin like a reminder that I was only here to maintain the background of someone else's celebration. The MC tapped the microphone, the echo cutting through the chatter, and declared with bright excitement, "Let's celebrate, Evelyn, 18 again." My breath stopped. Even the music seemed to hesitate. I set my glass down slowly, silently, and in that small, quiet motion, I recognized something I'd never dared to admit before. This moment, this night, would be the final memory my family would have of me, though none of them had the faintest idea. I'd grown up in a home where the light always found my sister first. No matter where it started, no matter where it fell, it drifted naturally toward her. Even as young kids, Evelyn never reached for attention. It came to her the way summer heat sinks over Austin, heavy, uninvited, effortless. I learned early on how to adjust myself around that spotlight, how to shrink so the brightness wouldn't sting. I must have been 8 the first time I realized the role they quietly assigned me. Evelyn had a cheer competition that morning, and Mom spent hours curling her hair into perfect spirals, sprinkling glitter across her cheeks, pinning a bow so enormous it brushed her shoulders. I stood at the doorway clutching my own brush, waiting for someone to see me, to notice me, to simply acknowledge I was also there. But they didn't. Dad only glanced at me long enough to say, "Sweetie, be helpful," before handing me Evelyn's water bottle. So I obeyed, and that pattern settled into my bones, me helping, her shining. By middle school, the rhythm of our roles was automatic. Evelyn spoke. I listened. She won. I clapped. She wanted something. I carried it. Family dinners were just extensions of that script. Relatives gathered around her, laughing, praising her beauty, her talent, her future, making predictions about how far she'd go. When their eyes finally drifted toward me, their questions shrank into polite fragments, too gentle, too thin, almost like they were apologizing for having to ask anything at all. How's school? Still drawing? Then, inevitably, their focus would shift back to Evelyn, as if I had only spoken to fill a pause. But the moment I could never shake, the one that still lived inside me long after it happened, came when I was 15. I had spent weeks making her a scrapbook for her birthday, tiny watercolor borders, careful sketches, and a layout I had perfected under my desk lamp every night. I wrapped it in brown paper, tied it with twine, and for the first time in a long while, felt quietly proud. She opened it in front of our parents, flipped through 2 pages, and stopped. "It's cute," she said, smiling not at the book, but at her reflection in the new tablet Mom had just handed her. But Mom bought me something real this year. She tossed the scrapbook onto the table. The spine bent when it landed. Something inside me bent too. Later that night, I sat on my bedroom floor and tore out one of the pages. It was a sketch of a room I imagined I'd design someday. Tall windows, soft light, a chair facing the sunrise. I held that single page for a long time, wondering if anything I created would ever matter to them. The rest of the scrapbook went into the back of my closet. The one page remained in my sketchbook. It's still there. As I grew older, the imbalance sharpened instead of dissolving. Evelyn got a car at 16. I got to help her pick the color. She had friends over. I brought snacks. Relatives came to visit and asked about her grades, her prom dress, her college applications. My own plans drifted into the background like an afterthought. Mom always said I was independent, the kind of daughter who didn't need much. It sounded like a compliment until I realized it was permission to overlook me so they could save their energy for the daughter who demanded more. Dad once told me, "You're steady, autumn. Evelyn's fragile. She needs us more." Yet fragility never seemed to prevent her from stepping on everything in her path, especially me. By 17, I had learned to map the house by sound. The loud rooms belonged to them. The quiet corners belonged to me. I stopped asking for rides, for attention, for anything. Silence became dependable, predictable, safe. And yet, buried deep beneath all that quiet, a restless part of me still waited for someone to look at me the way they looked at her, for acknowledgement that didn't feel earned, forced, or conditional. That hope finally dissolved, completely, painfully, on the night of my 18th birthday. The moment I stepped into the backyard, the heat pressed against me, not just from the summer air but from the weight of knowing my place had always been a few steps behind everyone else. The string lights flickered over the patio, casting gold across the guests' faces that weren't looking at me. I stood at the edge of the crowd, my hands still sticky from arranging the candles Mom had instructed me to set up earlier. "Make sure everything looks perfect before the guests arrive," she had said. She didn't say happy birthday. The MC tapped the microphone again, and the vibration traveled through the glass I held. Conversations hushed. A thin quiet lifted from the air. "Let's give a huge cheer," he announced, to Evelyn, celebrating her 18th again. The crowd erupted in applause. I didn't. My vision blurred under the lights. Evelyn stepped forward in a white dress she'd bought specifically for the night, the fabric catching every shimmer of gold. My eyes drifted to the cake. 3 tiers, marble frosting, her name written in gold across the top. My name was nowhere at all. Mom touched my arm, firm but gentle, the kind of touch that pretended to be loving but carried orders behind it. "Don't step up," she whispered. "You'll confuse people." Confuse people. At my own birthday. I glanced at Dad. He didn't look my way. He was clapping too loudly, the kind of clapping people do when they're trying to drown out guilt. Evelyn made a wish. Cameras flashed. Guests chanted her name. Someone beside me whispered, "She looks stunning. This is so her night." And the sharp truth cut cleanly. This wasn't an accident. This celebration wasn't mine, accidentally overshadowed. It had been reassigned, intentionally redirected, just like everything else in my life. My throat tightened, but my breathing stayed even. I did what I'd always done, quiet, composed, unseen. I lifted my glass halfway, as if joining the toast, then set it back down before it reached my mouth. No one noticed. A drop of candle wax fell, hardened, and turned pale on the tablecloth. That was the moment I knew I was leaving. I turned away from the music, the laughter, the house that had never belonged to me. Barefoot, walking across warm pavement, dress brushing my knees. I didn't run. I simply walked until the sounds faded into a distant hum swallowed by the night. The night stretched on as I walked down the empty streets, barefoot on warm asphalt, the city lights flickering faintly against the darkened houses. The air had cooled enough to sting my skin, but the weight on my chest felt lighter than it had in years. I didn't know where I was headed, only that I couldn't stay. Every step was a small act of liberation, a quiet assertion that my life did not belong to anyone else's expectations. When the bus finally appeared, its headlights cutting through the darkness like an unspoken invitation, I didn't hesitate. I climbed aboard, the driver casting a brief glance at my bare feet and dress, but he didn't ask questions. I was grateful. The hiss of the door folding shut behind me felt like a line drawn between the life I had known and the one I was about to shape. I found a seat near the back and let the engine lull me into stillness. The hum of the bus over asphalt, the passing flicker of streetlights, and the faint smell of old coffee in the air wrapped around me in a quiet cocoon. For the first time all night, there was no one to tell me to smile, to stand aside, to keep my voice low. No one demanding that I shrink to make another shine. I reached into my bag and pulled out my sketchbook. The cover was worn soft from years of handling, corners bent and frayed. My fingers found the page where I had torn out that first sketch of a room I had imagined designing. The imprint of absence stared back at me, a memory of a girl overlooked, a talent unnoticed. I flipped to a fresh page and pressed a pencil to it. Slowly, a room emerged, tall windows, light spilling across the floor, a solitary chair turned toward the sunrise. I didn't know it yet, but this page was the first draft of the life I was about to build, a life entirely mine. The bus carried me north through the night, each mile stripping away remnants of Austin, of a family that had never truly seen me. Hours passed as I sketched and planned silently. By the time the skyline of New York rose in the distance, a strange sense of resolve had settled in me. Not peace, not hope, just a certainty that the place I was moving toward could hold me, could be mine, because I would claim it myself. Queens was all I could afford, a narrow room with peeling paint, a window facing a brick wall, and a radiator that clanked every time it woke from its long slumber. With money I had saved from a summer internship, $600, I paid the deposit. When the door closed behind me, the silence was expansive. Not empty, open. I set my sketchbook on the windowsill, feeling the space, small and imperfect, already starting to feel like my own. My days became a steady montage of survival and creation. Mornings in a small cafe, the hiss of milk frothing, the faint jazz drifting through old speakers, wiping tables until my hands ached. Nights spent at my laptop, scribbling notes, building digital models, sketching designs between the sounds of traffic and thin apartment walls. I didn't speak much, and I didn't need to. In a city like this, anonymity was a blessing. One morning, as I wiped down the counter, an older woman approached. Her presence carried a quiet precision, the kind of awareness that makes a person seem capable of seeing through walls. She pointed to a napkin where I had unconsciously sketched a corner of the cafe. "You drew this?" she asked. I nodded. She studied it for a long moment, then said, "You see the room. Most people only see objects." Her name was Marisol Hale, and I would learn later that she was known for transforming abandoned warehouses into homes filled with soul. That day, she handed me her card. "Come by the studio," she said. "I might have a space for you." Her offer wasn't a promise. It was a door left slightly ajar. At her studio, a converted warehouse with brick walls and skylights pouring in the afternoon sun, Marisol spread my sketches across a long oak table. Her finger paused over the page of the imagined room I had drawn on the bus. "You build from absence," she murmured. I didn't ask what she meant. I simply understood. The internship she offered paid almost nothing, but it granted access, tools, scraps of wood, fabric samples, empty rooms waiting to be reimagined. I swept floors, labeled materials, and learned how light softened stone and texture healed wounds no one would ever name aloud. My routine split into studio by day, cafe by night, sketchbook always in hand. I learned to listen to space, how it breathed when a chair shifted, how shadows made honesty visible. Marisol rarely praised me, but when she did, her words anchored me. "You work like someone who's had to earn every inch. You understand quiet. You design with memory." I built furniture from reclaimed pieces, a table from old beams, a lamp from rusted copper, a chair that creaked like it remembered something long forgotten. Every project was a fragment of rebuilding myself, of reclaiming a life that had been overlooked. 3 years passed in this rhythm of growth and grind. My fingers bruised. My eyes blurred at 2 in the morning. The barefoot girl who had left Austin still existed inside me, but quieter, like an echo I had learned to respect rather than obey. Then one evening, Marisol placed a stack of files on my desk. "Clients ask for you by name," she said. No smile, no ceremony. But I felt it, the subtle shift, the first breath of a life that belonged only to me. That night, in my tiny room, I created a spreadsheet, expenses, savings, supplies, projected costs, potential clients. A step-by-step plan titled Steps to Independence. Hours pass in quiet calculation, decisions stacking like bricks. By morning, I had a plan. Automatically it would be mine. The bus had carried me away. My work would carry me forward. This time I wasn't running. I was building. When my TED Talk finally went live, I expected little. A quiet auditorium, a small audience, an unnoticed story. I spoke without names. A girl whose 18th birthday had been stolen, who left mid-party and chose silence as a boundary. 2 days later, my inbox flooded. Messages, articles, social shares captioned with, "This is what healing looks like." The video surpassed 1 million views before I could even process the first wave. I didn't respond. I moved through routine. Studio work, sketch revisions, client calls, Luca bringing overly sweet coffee. Routine kept the noise at bay. Then the messages from Texas began. A text from my mother. "We saw the video. Evelyn is upset. Maybe check on her." Later, "Dad, congratulations on your success. But your sister feels targeted." The familiarity stung more than the content. I set the phone aside and kept measuring a slab of reclaimed oak, tape clicking against the edge. Nothing in my hands trembled. The next day, Luca showed me an interview Evelyn had done, her face on a gossip site. I didn't feel anger, only quiet confirmation. Some people collapse without ever being the center. By evening, screenshots, reactions, critiques, and old posts began to surface, casting doubt on Evelyn's version of the story. I stayed silent. Silence is weight. It tilts truth to the surface. That night, I finalized the paperwork to expand automatically into a full studio, signed a Manhattan lease, updated registrations, and closed years-old loops. Every signature felt like a quiet door shutting behind me. No noise, no applause, just closure. A week later, the TED Talk reached 5 million views. Clients began reaching out. Projects multiplied. Meanwhile, Evelyn's accounts faltered, comments piling up, sponsorships paused, content overshadowed by scrutiny from strangers who saw patterns she could not hide. Marisol visited one afternoon, watching me adjust a lighting mock-up. She said simply, "You don't have to explain anything. They are doing that work for you." I nodded, feeling an old ache loosen from its roots. That night, my phone buzzed again. An email from Evelyn. One sentence. Not apology, not responsibility, just a fragile acknowledgement. I didn't reply. Some endings are not meant to be softened. By the week's end, automatically it opened its doors. Clients filtered in. Journalists took notes quietly, and the light moved across polished floors like something finally settling into place. I walked through the space with the steadiness of someone who rebuilt herself without permission, without recognition, without needing approval. Justice didn't arrive loudly. It stitched itself quietly through consequences, through absence, through silence. Balance restored. Most nights I stayed late at the studio, pendant lights dim, unfinished models and reclaimed what around me, the city outside pulsing softly. I gravitated to the olive tree in the loft center, its leaves brushing the skylight, catching the evening glow. 3 years ago, I couldn't keep a plant alive. Now, one grew taller than I could reach. Sitting on the floor against the brick wall, sketchbook open, I let lines flow freely. No deadlines, no expectations, just space taking shape under my hands. Thoughts of Austin faded, not out of bitterness, but distance. That house that once felt like my whole world now existed only as a faint outline. Evelyn's email replayed once, then faded like static. My parents' silence, once suffocating, now felt like space to breathe. I finished setting up the final piece of my exhibition, a cube of glass glowing softly, a chair inside facing a blank white wall. Not meant to impress, meant to embody the first clean moment after the storm. Turning off the gallery lights, only that cube remained, gold spilling softly across concrete. Walking back into my loft, city lights reflected against the window, merging with my own space. Years of quiet rebuilding had shaped this home. I exhaled slowly. For the first time, I didn't wonder who might be watching. I was enough company on my own. Some people rebuild by shouting pain into the world. I rebuilt by turning the lights on in a room no one ever imagined I'd own. Silence had not broken me. It had shaped the walls, the floor, the doorway I now walked through unafraid. Standing there, looking at the city below, I understood something simple and enduring. You don't have to return to the place that erased you to prove you exist. You can build forward,